So, hi, good day. Welcome to another lesson. It's me, Teacher Madden. So, together with Teacher Wendell, we're going to discuss three topics entitled Prosocial Behavior, Intercultural Communication, and Effective Communication. So, let's start with prosocial behavior. Prosocial behavior are those intended to help other people. These actions are characterized by a concern for the rights, feelings, and welfare. Altruism, behavior that is motivated by an unselfish concern for the welfare of others. For example, a donor who gives thousands of dollars to a local charity. Heroism, actions that involve courageous risk-taking to obtain a socially valued goal. Example, when a fireman rushes into a fire and risks his life to save a child. Diffusion of responsibility, why bystander effect occur. The amount of responsibility assumed by bystander is shared among them. What is bystander effect? Tendency for people to become less likely to assist in distress when there are a number of other people also present. Implicit bystander effect. The decrease in helping behavior brought about by simply thinking about being in a group. So here are the 5 steps that determine helping, according to Latins and Darley, 1970. Number 1, notice the situation. Number 2, interpret situation as emergency. Number 3, assume responsibility. Number 4, assess ability to take action. And the last, number 5, decide whether to act. When a situation where people are in need, when everyone is looking but no one is acting, relying on others to define the situation, concluding that no intervention when help is actually needed, that is pluralistic ignorance. Situational factors that affect helping. Helping those people you only like. Helping those people who mimic us. Helping those who are not responsible for their problem. And exposure to prosocial models increases prosocial behavior. Emotions and prosocial behavior. Generally, we help more when we are in a positive mood, but can also decrease helping because people in a very good mood tend to interpret an ambiguous situation as an emergency and resist helping if it involves something difficult or unpleasant. So next is empathy, a complex affected and cognitive response to another person's emotional distress. Includes being able to feel the person's emotional state, feeling sympathetic, and trying to solve the problem and take perspective of others. Personality disposition. It is a characteristic, behavioral tendency determined by genetics, learning experiences, or both. Motivation and morality. 3 motives involved when a person is faced with a moral dilemma to help or not help someone. Number 1, self-interest. Motivated to engage in whatever behavior provides greatest satisfaction. Number 2, moral integrity, motivated to be moral and engage in moral behavior. And number 3, moral hypocrisy, motivated to appear moral while doing one's best to avoid the cost of actually being moral. Here are the following models and proposals in prosocial behavior. Empathy, altruism. It feels good to help others. This model says prosocial behavior is motivated solely by the desire to help someone in need and by the fact that it feels good to help. Such motivation may be strong enough that the helper is willing to engage in unpleasant, dangerous, or even life-threatening activity. Compassion for someone in need outweighs all other considerations. Negative state relief model. Prosocial behavior is motivated by the bystander desire to reduce his or her own uncomfortable negative emotions. Doesn't matter if negative state was caused by the emergency itself or was unrelated to the emergency. In either case, you are likely to engage in prosocial acts to relieve your negative state. Pathetic joy hypothesis. Prosocial behavior is motivated by this positive emotion. A helper anticipates experiencing as the results of having beneficial impact on the life of someone in need. Genetic determinism model. Proposal that behavior is driven by genetic attributes that evolved because they enhance the probability of transmitting one's gene to subsequent generations.
For the second topic I discuss is about intercultural communication. In this topic, I discuss culture and communication, the definition of intercultural communication, Hall's theory, high context versus low context, direct versus indirect communication, and intercultural communication of Hall's theory and marketing. But before I start, why is it important to have understanding between different cultures? Understanding different people and their culture is one of the best ways we can learn from each other and learn more about ourselves. Understanding different cultures allows you to be more open, accepting, and tolerant of other people. Culture understanding. To understand people's behavior, to prevent the misunderstanding, to respect the differences between cultures, to communicate the right message to right people. Intercultural communication is targeted at allowing for positive and productive interaction. According to Libaron 2003, communication is the vehicle by which meanings are conveyed, identity is composed and reinforced, and feelings are expressed. As we communicate using different cultural habits and meaning systems, what conflicts and harmony are possible outcomes of any interaction? What is intercultural communication? Intercultural communication is the verbal and non-verbal interaction between people from different cultural backgrounds. In other words, it's the process of communicating with people from another culture. According to Merrick 2008, interpersonal interaction between members of different groups which differ from each other in respect of knowledge shared by their members and in respect of the linguistic form of symbolic behavior. Communication varies according to its degree of field dependence, and that it can be classified into two general categories, high context and low context, by Libaron 2003. High context refers to societies or groups where people have close connections over a long period of time, while low context refers to societies where people tend to have many connections but shorter duration for some specific reason. High context and low context communication refers to the degree to which speakers rely on factors other than explicit speech to convey their message. Al 1971. Edward T. Hall is a cultural anthropologist. He is doctor in philosophy in Columbia University. Best known for his work in intercultural relation and communication. He one of the founders of intercultural communication study. Hall's framework, low context culture and high context culture. Low context culture, high individualism. Explicit manner, focus on requirements, avoid merging of issues, precise, punctuality. Low context culture are those that communicate information in direct, explicit, and precise ways. High context culture or collectivism, implicit manner, high commitment to long-term relationship, merge, not kept separate, relax about time. High context cultures are those communicate in ways that are implicit and rely heavily on context. Hall's theory, high context, covert messages, internalized messages, extensive nonverbal codes, reaction reserve, distinct in and out groups, strong interpersonal bonds, high commitment, open time. Hall's theory in low context, overt messages, plainly coded messages, details verbalized, reaction on surface, flexible in and out groups, weak interpersonal bonds, low commitment, and close time. Edward Hall's theory of proxemics suggests that people will maintain differing degrees of personal distance depending on the social setting and their cultural backgrounds. According to Max Dowell 2003, high context cultures, verbal messages have little meaning without the surrounding context, which includes the overall relationship between all the people engaged in communication. While low-context cultures exclude many of those stimuli and focus more intensely on the object communication event, the message itself means everything. Pause for thoughts. Do I recognize implied messages from others? And am I aware of the verbal and non-verbal cues that let me understand the speaker's meaning? Do I let my words speak for themselves? Do I prefer to be more direct, relying on what is explicitly stated in my speech? Why understanding the intercultural communication benefits marketing activities? Effective intercultural communication helps to eliminate communication obstacles like language barriers and stereotypes from international business. Effective global communication can be achieved through learning about other cultures and implementing communication strategies such as reflective listening and being open-minded. The need for effective intercultural communication can be found in all aspects of business, from internal communication to marketing and advertising. Effective global communication allows workers from different cultures to work together as a group. Additionally, poor translation in marketing and advertising can lead to poor sales internationally. Cross-cultural and marketing. Cross-cultural marketing can be seen as the strategic process of marketing and customers whose culture differs from the marketer's own culture. Consumption research is an essential precondition for appropriate product design. All market behaviors are culture-bound, so the marketers need to understand the culture and match marketing mix with consumer preferences, purchasing behavior, and product use patterns in a potential market. Direct versus indirect communication. Direct communication is when the meaning of the message is communicated mainly via words. In cultures with direct communication style, both literal truthfulness as well as efficiency in communication are highly valued, and to some extent are a higher priority than personal or political sensitivities, especially in a business setting. Indirect communication is when meaning is not only in the words, but mainly in the surrounding context of a conversation. In other words, somebody who is indirect will leave it up to the listener to fill in the blanks and make out the meaning by correctly reading the contextual clues. Nonverbal communication status and or age of people involved in the body language and silent language. Body language is a form of nonverbal communication which consists of body postures, gestures, facial expressions, and eyes movement. Body language may provide clues to the attitude or state of mind of a person. Silent or indirect communication doesn't always show disinterest but could be a sign of respect. Cultural differences and marketing approaches. High context culture, indirect and transformational advertising messages, creating emotions through pictures and entertainment. Low context culture, direct and rational advertising messages, providing product information. High context advertisement example, ambiguous message with very little information about the product. And the low context advertisement example, informative data-oriented with direct message. This is culture-related design criteria. The high context style and the low context style.
So for the last topic entitled Effective Communication, improving your social skills. Building good relationship with other people can greatly reduce stress and anxiety in your life. Improving your social support is linked to better mental health in general. If you are socially anxious and desperately want to make friends but too fearful to do, as a result of these anxious feelings, you may even be avoiding social situations. Unfortunately, one of the consequences of avoiding social situations is that you never have the opportunity to build up your confidence interacting with others or develop strong communication skills that would increase the chance for successful relationships. So why are the communication skills important? So communication skills defined as are the key to developing and keeping friendships and to building a strong social support network. They also help you to take care of your own needs while being respectful of the needs of others. People aren't born with good communication skills. Like any other skill, they are learned through trial and error and repeated practice. Three areas of communication that you may want to practice are nonverbal communication, conversation skills, and assertiveness. What is nonverbal communication? A large part of what we communicate to each other is nonverbal. What you say to people with your eyes or your body language is just as powerful as what you say with words. When you feel anxious, you might behave in ways that are designed to avoid communicating with others. For example, you may avoid eye contact to speak very softly. In other words, you are trying not to communicate, likely to avoid being judged negatively by others. However, your body language and tone of voice does communicate powerful message to others about your emotional states, attitude towards the listener, knowledge of the topic, and honesty. Here are the steps in practicing nonverbal communication. Step 1. Identifying your trouble spots. To get started, ask yourself a few questions. Do I have a trouble maintaining eye contact when talking with others? Do I smile too much because of nervousness? Too little? Some of the nonverbal behaviors you may want to pay attention to are posture, example, held up and alert, leaning forward. Movement and gestures, example, keeping arms uncrossed.
The second step on nonverbal communication that we should practice is experiment with practice nonverbal skills. Try to practice only one skill at a time, so you can make sure you have mastered it before moving on to the next skill. You may want to ask a trusted friend or relative to give you some feedback on your nonverbal behavior. This feedback can be very useful as we often do not really know how we appear to others. The second areas of communication that may want to practice is conversational skills. One of the biggest challenges for someone with social anxiety is starting conversations and keeping them going. It is normal to struggle a bit when you are trying to make small talk because it's not always easy to think of things to say. The first step on conversation skills that we should practice is identifying your trouble spots. Below are some questions that you may want to ask yourself to identify the areas you want to work on. Do I have trouble starting conversations? Do I quickly run out of things to say? Another is, do I tend to say yes, not and try to keep other people talking to avoid having talk? Last is, am I reluctant to talk about myself? The second step on conversation skills that we should practice is experiment with and practice your conversation skills. The next time you have an opportunity to practice starting or ending a conversation, try breaking some of your normal patterns. For example, if you tend not to speak about yourself, try to share your thoughts and feelings a bit more and see what happens. Here are a few suggestions for some practice situations. Speak to a stranger. For example, at a bus stop, in an elevator, or waiting in line. Talk to your neighbors. For example, about the weather or something going on in the neighborhood. Interact with coworkers. For example, chat with coworkers on your coffee break or in the staff room at lunch. The last areas of communication that we want to practice is assertiveness. If you are socially anxious, you may have some difficulty expressing your thoughts and feelings openly. Assertiveness skills can be difficult to learn, especially since being assertive can mean holding yourself back from the way you would normally do things. Assertive communication is the honest expression of one's own needs, wants, and feelings, while respecting those of the other person. When you communicate assertively, your manner is non-threatening and non-judgmental, and you take responsibility for your own tips for communicating assertively. Many people find it hard to ask for what they want, feeling that they don't have the right to ask, or fearing the consequences of the request. For example, you may think, what if he says no, or she will think I am rude for asking. When making a request, it can be helpful to start by saying something that shows that you understand the other person's situation. For example, I know you probably have had a lot on your mind lately. Next, describe the situation and how you feel about it. For example, this presentation is due next Friday, and I'm feeling pretty overwhelmed and worried that I won't be able to get it done in time. It is important to talk about your feelings and not to make accusation to others. Then describe what you would like to see happen. Be as brief and positive as possible. For example, I really like to figure out how we can share more of the work responsibility. Last, tell the person what would happen if your request was honored. How would you feel? Sometimes, you may want to add what you will do in return. For example, I will make sure to help make the slides for your presentation next. Many people have trouble expressing their views openly. Perhaps, you wait for others to give their opinion first, and will share you only if you happen to agree. Being assertive means being willing to state your opinion even if others haven't done so or if your opinion is different. Being assertive means that you own your opinion. That is, you take responsibility for your view. For example, my personal view is that it was unfair for her to ask that of you. Being assertive also means being willing to consider new information and even changing your mind. However, it does not mean changing your mind just because others think you know. Sometimes people who are not used to us being assertive may need some time to adjust. Just because people may not initially respond in a positive way, doesn't mean that being assertive is wrong. They just need to adjust to the change. Final tip. Although it is important to test skills out and use the trial and error process, we can learn a lot from observing others. Ask yourself who you feel comfortable interacting with. What do they do? Try to identify some of the things that other people do that make you feel good interacting with them, and then try doing those things yourself.